Thanks for joining in. So, my name is Jared Dimitri. I'm the executive director here at Volatile. This is Zoe. She is one of our journalists at the magazine as well.
Oh, great.
So, definitely. I just wanted to, thank you for your time. Glad we were able to get on this conversation, and
Mm.
definitely interested in talking with you because I know you've been doing this for a while and you're not new to it. So being a
Hmm.
South African designer with several of, just the years that you've presented and shown, I'm excited
Mm.
to just kind of hear a lot of your story, your backstory, your history, and seeing the changes that we've gotten to now. Um, so to start off, tell us about yourself as well as your brand. How did you get into designing?
Well, my name is Mbuyiselo Malo. Yeah, I'm a Soweto-born fashion entrepreneur. So, yeah, I mean, I studied fashion, so I'm trained in it. And after studying, I actually went into working for the brand named Clive Rundel.
Okay.
So, yeah, the brand is yeah, it's got quite a long history. I mean, it's been in existence since 1980s,
Hmm.
so it's got it's got quite a history. I worked for the brand for about 6, 7 years, and then from there, I went back to school. I studied I studied business management
Okay.
because, yeah, during my time working in the fashion industry, I realized that I had quite a love for the business side as well
Yeah.
of the fashion industry or the creative industry.
Hmm.
Yeah, and I wanted to get much more involved and sort of grow my ability and knowledge from the business side of things.
Right.
Um, yeah, because I found that a lot of the time we are trained, with a fashion background, we trained much more to be fashion designers rather
Hmm.
than creative entrepreneurs or designers working in the fashion business,
Yeah. A
Yeah,
1000%.
yeah. So when I was done with my business degree, then I opened my own product development agency.
Hmm.
And from there, I was now developing products and helping other designers, emerging designers, to, create their collections, get their collections ready for production. So I sort of took up that space in the sort of value chain.
Right.
But throughout the time, I was constantly in contact with Clive Rundle,
Hmm.
seeing how his business is going to the shows, also still taking part in some of the projects that he was doing. I think it was 2020, just before COVID hit, we went to Germany and we presented at the Mercedes-Benz Fashion Week
Fashion week
there.
there. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. But during this time, we're constantly having conversations about, where the brand was, where he'd like to take the brand, um, and just the change of the environment, modernizing things, what my
Right.
perspective is on
So where would you
fashion.
say in
Mhm.
2020, because 2020 specifically was such a transformative year, and I think it was a transformative year for fashion in a whole new way.
Yeah, yeah,
Because
yeah,
prior
yeah.
to that, there was already kind of like this revolution happening, of course, in America, but it was
Mhm.
definitely dominoing throughout what I was
Mhm.
seeing in the rest of the world as far as Black designers getting credit, doors
Yeah,
opening,
yeah, 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 yeah.
different leg ups, different, even the financial aspect where people were really starting to put money
Mm,
behind
mm,
a lot of
mm,
Black designers. So
mm,
even just the transition also from Mercedes-Benz Fashion Week now being in Germany and then kind of supporting certain different districts. So when it comes to
mhm,
Clive Randall itself
mm.
in 2020, when you guys had that conversation, what was the response on where the brand was at that time?
I think it's constantly a conversation about, are we speaking to, or who are we speaking to actually?
Yeah.
I think who's the brand speaking to and who would the brand like to speak to.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think internally, perhaps it's a conversation about, um, what are the principles? What's the philosophy behind the brand,
Yeah.
and how can the brand sort of present that now?
Mm-hmm.
You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
So who would you say are you speaking to? Like who would you say is the target market? Because I mean I mean, I think it's speeding up now, but I would easily say every 10 years, it's almost like you kind of have to ask that question again, especially as
Yeah,
an established brand with a tenure of
yeah,
over 30
yeah, yeah,
years. So,
yeah,
like, who
yeah.
would you say you guys are speaking to in the 2020 um,
Oh man,
era?
I think it was so, you're so right that 2020 was such a transformative year because
Mm,
it, for the brand specifically, when we looked at the current market that we were serving, it was really mature women, probably, I mean, 40, 50 and above in terms of
okay,
age.
okay.
It was really quite niche, and was niche probably because of the price point, but also because of the. I think if you look at the images that the brand presented, was
Hmm.
really quite strong, really,
Yeah,
really quite strong images, you know.
very much so.
Um, and the conversation was that, like, okay, look, we are speaking to this particular target market,
Hmm.
but who would we like to speak to? Who do
Yeah.
we want to speak to? And in that way, we then need to begin a process of internally asking ourselves, okay, how do we speak to
Hmm.
this target market? And
Right.
so, we thought like, yo, man, we want to speak to younger people,
Yeah,
you
I was
know?
just gonna ask that, like with this
Yeah,
transition, if your
yeah.
age group has been 45, 55, that age or
Mm,
even plus, transitioning a brand down to a younger, um,
yeah.
modern aspect of people is very hard because I mean, that change just from 40 to 30 becomes a very different mindset. And then if you want to go
Yeah,
below 30 even more, it's completely different, especially with how fast
yeah,
tech and things move now.
yeah,
So
yeah,
what
yeah,
would you
yeah.
say was the age group you guys, kind of caught the epiphany about what you wanted to move into?
I mean, for us, we thought, look, man, we we decided, all right, let's get actually younger people below
Hmm.
30
Hmm.
into the brand, right?
Okay.
Let them be the ones who are, um, with my leadership, but are actually interpreting or reinterpreting, repurposing some of the looks, some of the principles, some of the philosophies
Yeah.
of the brand, and let them be the ones who say, okay, this is what's vibing with me. This is
Hmm.
what speaks to me. Um, this is what, um, yeah, this is how I would like to see myself when I'm 45.
Right.
So we thought, all right, let's kind of do like from your 20s onwards. And I think it's probably also because we thought, all right, if we're going to get young people in, they need to be under 30 because at that age,
Hmm.
you're still brave enough to speak your mind,
Yeah.
go for what it is that you are looking for, and you not necessarily, I mean, you hit 30 and you start to kind of tip into the 30s, then you
Hmm.
got other things on your mind that you're trying to figure out.
Yeah,
And we were
it's like the
trying to
world
get,
hasn't limited you yet. Like you haven't had
yeah,
kids,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
the bills aren't
Exactly.
substantial yet. You still have time to really be
Exactly.
optimistic. Yeah.
Exactly. And we were
Hmm.
trying to really get or harness that spirit into the brand,
Hmm.
because I thought like, okay, if you're gonna want to speak to a younger generation,
Right.
then then you gotta then you're gonna have you need you need courage. You
Hmm.
need young people that are courageous, that will go for that won't compromise,
Yeah.
that will be techno savvy, that
Mm-hmm.
where, technology is just a part of what they do.
100%.
Whereas, you start to like 30, 35 and above, you have to think like, oh,
Yeah.
hey, I gotta grab my phone, I gotta do this, I gotta,
Mm-hmm. It's
whereas
a little bit more
for,
structured.
yes, whereas
Mm-hmm.
30 and below, it's an extension of yourself. Technology
Right.
is just, well, this is normal, this is what happens.
Exactly.
So I think for us, yeah, we thought, well, look, let's get people into the brand, working in the brand, 30 and below,
Mm-hmm.
and let's start to have a conversation.
Right.
Internally, let's have a conversation with them. And then externally, let's see how that then sort of translates, and how then the market, who responds in the market. You know
Right.
what I
So what
mean?
was that
So,
conversation kind of like? I mean, as you bring a younger energy in, you
mm,
bring a younger ideal in, a younger mindset. What was some
mm.
of those conversational points like that then in turn end up trickling out of the brand when almost really how we got to the digital fashion week that we just presented in 2021. What was that process like?
So I mean, it was a constant conversation about uh, what the brand is,
Hmm.
sort of historically, and what the brand means for us now.
So what is
Um,
the brand? What would you say is the brand of Clive Rundel?
oh man, we were having a conversation early on today, and I was saying to them, it's so strange that um, historically, the face of the brand has been this white guy,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
And the public doesn't know that, he's probably been the only white person. If we're going to talk race, he's been the only white person in the brand. It's
Hmm.
been predominantly, it's been, the studio has been run by Black women,
Yeah.
you know
Okay.
and for me, in having that conversation, I thought, like, yo, we have to, what does that mean? You say the word Clive Rundle, it means something, but
Hmm.
you look at the clothes, what does that say? you
Yeah.
know um and we also were discussing how it is that for us, Clive, or the brand Clive Rundle, has really been quite a, like, like a concentrated African, uh, like a pressed, concentrated African perspective,
Okay.
without any compromise. And
Okay.
so, how can that then reflect for us now, contemporary or modern African,
Hmm.
which sort of, which principles, what DNA, what part of the DNA says African, what can we tap into that says, okay, I'm African in 2020, or I'm African in 2021,
Yeah.
So the conversation was that, like, okay, guys, let's then go back and look at the fundamental foundations
Hmm.
right? So which
Yeah.
pieces for you are like, okay, I love this piece, or I
Yeah.
love that piece. Um,
I
and
really
then
like the
those could
staple pieces
be,
of the brand. Like,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Like staple pieces where you think, okay, a dress,
Hmm.
that forms part of the Clive Rundle brand, but also it's something that is in anyone's wardrobe. A
Yeah.
dress, a pair of pants, a shirt, um, a jacket, so those kind of staples, we took those staples and we said, all right, let's strip them down into their pillars themselves. So, for an
Hmm.
example, we took a shirt, right? And we said, okay, if we literally took away everything out of a shirt, what needs to remain in order for you to say this is a shirt,
Hmm.
right? So we thought of, okay, we took out the body of the shirt, and we were just left with sleeves, a collar, and the center front button stand.
Yeah, just a skeleton pretty much.
Yeah, just the
Hmm.
skeleton, right? And then
Right.
from there we said, all right, that's Clive, that's the structure, that's the heritage that Clive has given to us.
Hmm.
And now let's fill that with
The
our perspective.
details. Yeah.
Yeah, what do we
Okay.
want to say about the shirt? What's a shirt today?
Right.
And in the conversation, we started to think like, okay, it's like Clive has given us a canvas, a blank canvas, and so we can fill that blank canvas with our own voices, our own perspective.
Hmm.
And for some things,
Interesting.
we took that literally. So we took a rectangle piece like a canvas, we stitched it on top of a onto a shirt, and something came up,
Yeah.
right? So if you look at some of those images, there's a shirt there that has a rectangle piece on the back, right?
Hmm.
And on the front, it all you see is either sleeves and a collar and a center front button stand.
Yeah.
That idea translated into a skirt as well. It
Hmm.
translated into a dress, right? So it was that kind of, okay, let's strip back and then fill in our own idea, our own voice. What do you want to say about the dress?
Hmm.
It should be easy. It should be comfortable. It should definitely be cool.
Yeah.
It should have consideration for literally the environment and sustainability, because
Hmm. That's
in
huge right now.
building, yeah, and it's something that it's strange because it's something that wasn't really translating in the past for Clive. I mean, he's
Hmm.
been doing that. He's been recycling fabrics. He's been
Yeah.
upcycling. We've done collections where we took old suits, we took old garments, and we
Hmm.
remade them. We
Okay.
repurposed them into new, but that didn't quite translate. You know what I mean?
Yeah, the people just weren't ready for it yet for that
Yeah.
ideal because you kind of have to give it before people can kind of be receptive to it. So
Mm,
with the
mm,
brand going through such a transition, it
mm,
really internally and externally throughout a year like 2021 becoming more useful, would you say with
mm,
the collection that you guys did in the digital aspect of South Africa Fashion Week 21, did you
mhm.
achieve the goal that you were hoping to go into with?
I think so. I think, well, yes, we've got like, uh, we're really quite ambitious with it, but
Hmm.
we are also like pacing ourselves, We
Yeah.
are like, okay, let's take this a step at a time. We are literally rebuilding a brand. We're
Hmm.
repurposing this. So it's not just going to happen on one collection, right?
Right. Yeah.
So internally, it's going to be a continuous conversation, probably for the next 4 seasons, I would
Okay.
say,
Okay.
at least 4 seasons. And then we can kind of go, all right, are we all vibing? Are we
Hmm.
all, then we can also have 4 seasons to look back on and go, all right, where have we gone? What
Yeah.
are we doing here?
What was
You know,
good? What was wrong? What really worked? What
yeah,
stood out? All that
yeah,
stuff. Okay.
yeah, 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 yeah. And we can have 4 seasons to also look at what the market is saying, you
Hmm.
know? Um, so yes, internally, I think we have started, which is important. We have started to rebuild, to look at the codes of the brand, to reinterpret them, to start speaking also to the market. How are we speaking to the market?
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, I think for me, the fact that we have started, the fact that we have presented a collection, that is resonating with people, that is wearable also.
Right.
Um, and for now, it's okay, one collection at a time,
Hmm.
one garment, one garment at a time, literally, you
Yeah.
know. So yeah, for me, I'm happy that okay, we have started, we are rebuilding, we have presented a collection, and we are getting a vibe and some synergy internally in the brand, you're getting that
Mhm.
going as well. Yeah.
Wonderful. So at this point, how big is the team at Clive Randall? Because I think one thing that you said that I do want to circle back to quickly is when you
Mm,
mentioned, or how you mentioned and spoke of Clive Randall, it spoke in the sense of like an opportunity. You
mm,
spoke to it like, if we strip everything away of what the brand is, the brand may
mm,
be seen as like this white guy. However, the heartbeat and the organs of it are Black women,
mm,
who have such a strong voice no matter where you find them at so consistently. So
mm,
when it comes to the size and the team now, what does that look
mm.
like at Clive Rundle?
So right now we've got a team of about 7 people,
Okay.
right? So it is the women. There was two, and it's like matriarchs. There were two
Mm-hmm.
women that were really driving the brand, Elizabeth and Matilda, right? And they still there, sort of overseeing the young people that have come in, right?
Okay.
And so you've got the two matriarchs, and then the rest is then the four, and I mean sometimes five. Just
Yeah.
some young people are sort of coming in and out, but
Okay.
you've basically got a team of about four young people in there taking care of the departments. So it's from things like social media and
Mm-hmm.
online things, the digital aspect.
Right.
It's the cutting room. It's the machining and putting things together. It's sampling. It's fabrication. So we've
Mm-hmm.
got quite a small team,
Yeah.
which I think is good to start off with a really compact team so you can
Yeah.
really get systems right. You
The
can get,
communication is much
yeah,
better
yeah,
at a small team
yeah,
too.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I think also with the intergenerational mix, you also got to be like careful
Mm-hmm.
of that and manage that really quite nicely, because you've
Right.
got two matriarchs who are 60 and above,
Mm-hmm.
and you've got a 30-year gap. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah. The
Yeah,
next people
you
are
got
like
to
25 and 27 and 30,
right,
literally. So it's like
right,
this
right. So
huge
this
difference of
huge gap,
perception. Mm-hmm.
yeah, which has like really amazing tension, because now you've got, you know, I mean, even the music is different now, Jared. You got
Mm-hmm.
young people bumping what's hot now
Right. Right.
compared to, I mean, I know with Elizabeth, we call her Lizzie.
Mm-hmm.
Mom Lizzie, she's on that like gospel
Yeah.
vibe.
Old school, just
Old
hymns,
school,
just
yeah,
kind of playing quietly in the
yeah.
background. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I
So
do.
it creates a very amazing atmosphere and a very amazing culture where you've got gospel in the morning, and
Mm-hmm.
then maybe from lunch onwards, then we'll start playing,
Yeah.
what's hot now.
Gets upbeat a little bit, gets a little bit more
Yeah, yeah,
modern.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. And so you've got us in the morning also kind of, being mentored and getting into the groove of Clive Rundle.
Mm-hmm.
And then, sort of in the afternoon, you've got a higher pace energy happening, and more like, okay, this is what's happening now. And so the energy is flowing by then. So, when I listen to the music, I also think like, oh man, this is such a beautiful illustration of
Mm-hmm.
what is happening. That in the
Right.
morning you've got gospel, old school vibes, and in the
Mm-hmm.
afternoon you've got the more
This
like,
young hip hop upbeat stuff. Yeah,
yeah,
it's like this
yeah, yeah,
transition.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So
yeah.
being in your position as like the creative director of the
Mm,
brand of where it is now, um, tell me about the process of kind of like what came after, or what is, I don't even say came after because we're still really, really close and it's very fresh. Like managing what's coming after presenting at South Africa Fashion Week, because you did the show in a
mm,
completely different way than previous because this was 100% digital. So
mm,
how has that response been? Really, because I would assume now that you're digital, you're looking
mm.
to a younger generation. You have been able to reach more people, and you've been able to reach the target because like you said, everybody's on their phones below the age of
Yeah,
30.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, the reception has really been quite, for me, it's really
Hmm.
been quite amazing, right?
Hmm.
That for a brand like Clive Rundle that has been consistently looked at as something a little bit out of reach, especially
Hmm.
by like a younger market.
Right.
Now it's like, oh man, it looks the same, but it kind of feels
Different.
slightly different, right?
Hmm.
Can't quite put a finger on it, but
Something's
something's
changing.
happened, something's changing
Hmm.
there, right? And I think that's the feedback that I've gotten a lot.
Hmm.
That yo, we recognize some of the things, but something's not, something's new, but we can't quite put a finger on it.
Hmm.
And then they can reference like, oh man, I love the skeleton shirts, I
Yeah.
love the dress, I love this, I love that, I'd love
Hmm.
to pick this up, I'd love to pick that up.
Right.
um yeah, so it has, and how it is that, man, people have just, on the digital, on the online side, people have really been like, yo, love this, love that, hey, can we talk, what's going on,
Hmm.
tell us more.
Right.
So for me it has been affirming that, okay, we're reaching, even if it is those early adopters, those innovators, but it's like those early adopters and innovators that are quite young, right?
Yeah.
That are going, that actually are kind of looking past the personality,
Hmm.
you know,
Right.
um, that Clive Rundle as a personality isn't a factor now, but
Hmm.
it's more like, okay, in in my scope of brands that are speaking to me now, Clive Rundle is part of that conversation, you know.
Interesting.
Yeah, so for me, that I think that was something that I wanted to achieve, where
Hmm.
when designers, or when people are speaking about designers, South African designers specifically,
Hmm.
that Clive Rundle can be a part of that conversation, and not just
Right.
as an OG, an
Hmm.
OG of brands, but actually
Yeah.
like, yo, this brand is talking to us,
Hmm.
is speaking for us as well, is
Yeah.
speaking to us, you know what I mean?
Hmm.
And not just like, oh man, I love that brand, but yo, it's, either through price point or through even just the images, like, whoa, it's heavy. Sometimes it can get like
Yeah.
quite heavy and intimidating, because you think,
Hmm.
whoa,
It's
where
too
am I going to wear
much.
that?
Yeah. It
Yeah,
doesn't
yeah, yeah,
fit.
yeah.
Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, it doesn't quite fit. Whereas now it's like, no, come in, you know,
Yeah. It's a lot
come
more
in.
inviting. And I honestly think
Yeah.
that's something huge that's happening because I see it happening here in New York in a
Oh,
major,
really?
major way because
Oh, okay.
so many of the things that you're saying about brands trying to figure out how to be younger, how to appeal to
Mm,
a younger market, um,
mm,
understanding that really, I mean, the money is changing, and everybody in business has to follow the money. When you go back to that
money.
enterprising and economic standpoint, you
Yeah,
have to
yeah,
follow the money if you want to be successful in
yeah,
business. So I
yeah,
watch
yeah.
brands like, say, Louis Vuitton do
Mm,
collaborations with Supreme, which
mm,
is a New York and a Parisian brand. You talk about
mm.
Gucci doing North Face, which again, it's
Yeah,
this high and low thing, but I do see
yeah.
so many brands from Fashion Week, New York wise, kind of
Mm,
changing their presentation where they're going from, well, let's not do a show, let's do an experience. So let's just put everything out
yeah.
and invite people into the store because consistent,
Mm,
Fashion Week used to be a little bit more elitist. And I think
yeah.
so much of the young, Gen Z specifically, is like, well, we don't
Mm,
want that. We want to feel like it's for everybody. So
yeah.
a
Yeah,
lot of
yeah, yeah.
things that you're saying, I'm seeing everywhere else. And it's interesting and
Mm.
good to hear that it's the same thing that's happening in South Africa because you really can understand now that this is a global movement that fashion is going through.
Yeah, I think you're totally right. And when I look at just sort of the story that's happening with Clive Rundle, I think it is quite a unique one,
Mm-hmm.
that as a South African brand that has more than a 30-year heritage and a history,
Yeah.
it's really quite unique if you sort of think like, okay, how old is the South African fashion industry, kind of?
Right. Yeah.
And I'm not talking like textiles or production. I'm literally talking like, you know, with marketing, with
Yeah.
fashion shows, in store,
The whole present, the magazine, everything, the stuff that
yeah, yeah,
makes
yeah, yeah.
fashion.
Yeah,
Yeah.
fashion, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what? We're talking 90s at the earliest.
Yeah.
But this brand has been around since the
Since the
80s,
80s. Yeah. So it was like
right?
right
So
before it was
before,
building it.
right, it was
Mm-hmm.
building, right? And I think with what is happening now, that the brand is transforming itself, it is handing over its creative and business reins to a young Black guy.
Yeah.
Um, it's a new story,
Mm-hmm.
especially for the context. And in terms of context, I mean even geography,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
We hear about these things like, Louis Vuitton is handing over to Virgil, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is quite a story.
It's a
You know what I
huge
mean?
one.
Because
It's
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 a
it's only
huge story.
when you think about it's really only two. And I know we was talking about this at the magazine just really
Mm,
probably last week. Like, I mean, when you look at who would you say who are at the top of fashion who are black, it's Olivier and Balmain, and then you have Virgil. And
yeah,
and it's because of, this tenure, and these houses are huge and they have these 100-year legacies, and they're now being
right.
led by two really young black guys. I think Virgil is what, 34, 35,
Yeah,
and then
yeah,
Olivier
yeah,
himself is like 33. So
yeah.
it's
Right.
like
So,
that's huge.
yeah. So for me, I was just like, man, it's a geography thing, but
Hmm.
literally our story is unique, but only in geography,
Yeah.
because this is what's happening elsewhere.
It
Here's
is, but
the
I think
city.
you will be in that conversation as well, just because when you look at the structure of South Africa Fashion Week, how long, not South Africa Fashion Week, but the industry, how long it's been around, how long
Yeah,
Clive Rundle has been
yeah,
around,
yeah.
you're almost like the first person to start to take over, where it's like, all right, this is the new direction. I'm stepping into a legacy point.
Right, right,
So it's like,
right.
as you take it to the next level and continue to push it, it's going to be like, well, there was the original designer, and then
Mm,
there was
mm.
Milo, and then so on
Right,
and so forth.
right,
And that's a
right.
huge thing, especially because I'll look at things in 10 years, and it's very rare that
Mm,
in the 20, the 2000s, we had this dot com, the internet was here. But now
mhm,
it's like 2020, it's like, well, social media is here. And it's like, well,
mm.
how is this about to change everything? Because we're looking at so many
Right,
things of the
right.
world changing. And you can feel it. A lot of people can't put their finger on it, but you can feel it. It's like
Mm,
everybody
mm.
going through the same thing. Um,
Yeah, 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 yeah.
and you
No,
stepping into this because it's huge.
I do think so, and I
Hmm.
think as well, it is it does also allow. I mean, if I also look at what is happening for South Africa around me, you do have Tebe, who's literally like put
Yeah,
us
he's
on,
going. Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Right.
Hmm.
You do have Rich Mnisi. So you do have these young South African brands that are holding their own on an
Hmm.
international stage, right?
Right.
And that then allows, or it shows other young Black designers that, yo, first of all, this is a career,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Because we know how we are. Like, you tell your parents, yo, I'm gonna go into fashion design. It's like,
What? You almost just got to
what?
do it because it's like asking, they don't understanding that is
No,
so
no,
you
right?
don't do that, right? It used
right.
to
So
be, it was really
now,
a rich people's sport, pretty much, if
right,
we're being honest.
right, pretty much, right.
Yeah.
So now it's like, okay, as it's a creative, it's an industry. You can
hmm
get into it and you can make a living off of it,
Yeah.
and really make a success of it, not
hmm
just,
Not struggle to
make
get by.
it.
Like you can be very
No, no,
comfortable
no,
out here. Yeah.
exactly, right. And so in a real tangible sense, I think people, designers like Teve, have
hmm
shown that. People, designers like Rich Mnisi, Ezoketo,
Yeah.
Lucanio, they've really shown that, right? It's not just
hmm
like, oh, you see it on TV, which is a bit like, nah, I don't buy it. Now it's, no, like you can point to someone, right?
Yeah.
And so that's really shown other young designers that, hey, you can get into this as a proper business and you can be comfortable.
hmm
And I think for us as a story, it's saying to other young designers, you can step into another brand and, you know,
Elevate.
uh, elevate it, add
Yes.
your voice to it. So you
hmm
don't always have to be starting your own brand.
Yeah.
You can join
hmm
Tebe as a
hmm
brand, and there can be that possibility for you to rise up into, eventually, who knows, 20, 30 years time, where you
hmm
can be creative director for a Tebe brand, for a
Yeah.
Richard Nisi brand. You know what I mean? So
Yeah. a hundred
it's
percent.
also kind of opening up opening that thought for other
Yeah.
designers as well, that, oh, okay, actually, I don't have to necessarily start my own thing. I can plug into something.
Yeah. And this is how you can do it,
And
because
this
you're
is how you can
seeing
do
other
it.
people. Yeah, I think,
Right,
and
right.
that's a huge thing for us just as a magazine, just because our whole thing is really like you were saying, it's expanding fashion. And fashion has been so closed off to so many
Mm,
black people for so long, and black people around the world. It's just like, how do you get in? Can
mm.
you make money from it? Are we even allowed
Yeah,
to do it? What does it mean? Is there anything besides a photographer and a designer in this $1.3 trillion industry of fashion? That's all
right,
you hear
right.
photographer, you hear model, you hear designer. And I'm like, but
Yeah,
it's so much more to that. So it's really like, these are the opportunities. This is how you can do it. And really, really, like you said, expanding fashion, because that's what
yeah.
really what's happening. We're watching fashion expand. And
Mm,
it's starting to take off. And I really think, well, actually, I want to hear your take on it. Just like when you talk
mm,
about South Africa as a country and the network there, the fashion industry, when you talk about Nigeria and Lagos specifically
mm,
and their
mm,
infrastructure there,
mm,
where
mm.
do you see things moving, even just in the next 5 to 10 years, as far as Africa being taken seriously and looked at in a very serious manner in the global
Mm,
scale of
mm.
fashion?
Jared, I think one thing that you are right in the sense that social media is transforming the world in such a way that, like, it's so amazing, right? Because,
Yeah.
before maybe, let's say, 10 years ago, I I would have looked at African fashion, right?
hmm
Let me call it that, right? I would have looked at African fashion and I saw African fashion working in silos, right? So
hmm
you had Lagos, you had South Africa, uh, you had like pockets of fashion industries happening in these different
Right.
countries.
hmm
Whereas now we're starting to speak to each other,
hmm
and not just like, we're not just speaking to the world, but we are Africans speaking to each other,
Right.
right? So I think going forward, I hope and I think we will start to see South South Africa speaking to Nigeria, to Ethiopia, to Congo, to Malawi, as Africa as a continent beginning to, we speaking to each other and
hmm
really creating an industry, a flow of like, okay, cool. Look, I can get my fabrics from this country. I can get my printing done in this country. I can get, we can start looking and seeing how it is that we can leverage off of each other in
Hmm.
building each other,
Yeah.
Um, I don't think I haven't seen a particular country or a particular continent really make it onto the fashion industry with just one designer.
Yeah.
If I think of the Japanese invasion, it was
Hmm.
three, four
They did it.
designers.
Yeah, it was like whole
So,
countries. It's really Korea
yeah,
just came as a
right?
country.
Right,
So yeah.
as a country, right? And
Yes.
wasn't just
Hmm.
like one designer who was
Mm-mm.
great. It was quite a few. If
Yeah.
I look at the Belgian, takeover, the
Hmm.
Antwerp Six, it was Dries, it was Magella, it was a few designers.
Right.
Even now, when I think of American designers, it's not
Hmm.
just one. There's
Yeah.
quite a few
It's
in
several.
order
Yeah.
to set themselves up as a country.
Hmm.
So I
Yeah.
think I think when I look at South Africa, but also as Africa, I think, man, we're gonna be seeing a handful of designers making it onto the international stage
Yeah.
and really, doing business at that level. You
Hmm.
know, I think it's one thing to be taken seriously; it's another to be doing business at that level.
That's very, very true. And real
You know what I
business, like
mean?
it changes. It's like, oh, we recognize you, and it's
Yeah,
like, but once you start really doing, I would say, like, I think Phoebe is he's tapping because it's like, oh, we
yeah,
recognize you, we see
yeah,
you, and then let's see if you can play at this level.
yeah.
Because if you can play at this level, next is doing
Right,
business and real
right,
business because the money
right,
changes,
right.
and also just like the orders change, like
Yeah,
what you have to be able to fulfill for these supply demands that may happen. I know so many
right.
things are changing just as far as things not, you don't have to need a department store as much as you needed to, but
Mm,
having that
mm,
department store is a different level of cosign.
mm,
It's almost
mm.
like,
Yeah,
presenting, like you can be a designer online, but being a designer in a fashion week is just a little bit, another
yeah.
level.
It's another
So
level, right?
yeah,
So for
so it's just
me, I think,
officiation.
yeah. So I think it's one thing for Africa to be taken seriously and to be acknowledged,
Yeah.
but I think it's going to be another level for African designers to be doing business at that
Hmm.
level. You know what I mean?
Right.
And competing and taking part and participating. I mean, I get competing, but I think
Hmm.
also participating and getting a share of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's one thing for them to be kind of like, ah, man, Africa's whatever, the new frontier, or there's another perspective, there's another frontier.
Hmm.
But it's another for them to kind of go, yo, we'll buy it. We'll
Yeah.
stock it in our stores. We'll carry
Hmm.
it.
Yeah.
And I think that's where I'd like African fashion to get to a point where we are doing those numbers, we are getting those orders, we are
Hmm.
fulfilling those orders. And
Right.
it's not just a charity. It's not like, oh, okay, as a diversity point.
Yeah,
You know
exactly.
what I
And
mean?
yeah,
Like,
exactly.
okay, we have to have them because if we don't,
Everybody's
then you're
asking
gonna
for
get
it, but
right. But actually, to be like, yo,
respect it.
we have
Yeah.
to we have to have it because this is good.
Yeah. The numbers now make sense. It's not just,
The
oh, people are
yeah,
asking, and it's not a quota of social justice like you are getting at.
exactly,
It's like, oh no,
exactly.
the numbers make sense because they're doing big
Yeah,
business and they're serious about it.
yeah,
And that's
yeah.
something that I would love to see as well, just because I think for the first time in a while,
Mm.
the recognition is happening publicly because the recognition has always been there privately. Because if you look at brands
Ah,
and how they have stole from, clearly,
yeah,
like, they've stole
yeah,
patents, concepts.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
like the
yeah, yeah,
private aspect, but it's like the public
yeah,
aspect is giving that endorsement, giving that
yeah,
cosign, giving that money, as a
yeah,
real supportive initiative, bringing somebody in like, oh no, we're going to work with you in real time. We're not just going to give you a grant and then send you back to where you were.
right?
We're going to put wings around you, because that's what fashion is. Fashion doesn't work without the fashion industry doesn't work without a network. We all know it's a network business.
Yeah,
So
Yeah. Yeah.
depending on the people
Yeah.
that co-sign off on you is probably going to be how high you get. So
Right.
having
Right.
people really bring you in, like LVMH, like
Yeah.
the CDFA in America, like the British
Mm,
Fashion Council, just having those
mm,
people start to support you, recognize you, acknowledge you, and put it
mm,
out there is something
mm,
huge. So
mm,
I definitely
mm,
agree with you in
mm,
many ways. Like I think
mm.
I want to see it go to the next level because I think it's scratching the
Yes.
surface now. But one thing I definitely want to see from African designers is the business mindset of it. Like, no, don't just want the attention, get the money too,
Yeah.
and get the money so it
Yeah.
lasts.
Right.
This has
Right.
to
And I think,
sustain.
and it's strange because for me, I can hear the business side of me talking. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And that's
Hmm.
why, in going back to school, I thought like, nah, man, there's another skill, there's another tool that I thought like I'm missing, and so I
Hmm.
gotta go back to school because I think that tool is the business side of
Yeah,
things.
and that's huge because I don't
So,
meet a lot of designer like, and I mean, me, I like to talk to designers, and I often talk to designers from around the world. And
mm,
one thing, and I can understand it completely, but one thing that I
mm,
often hear that's missing, which is why when you were saying you went back to school for business, was so big,
mm,
many designers just don't understand that financial business component that's
mm,
necessary to
mm.
build a fashion
Yeah,
business, because
right,
it is a
right.
business at the end of the
It
day.
is,
Like,
yeah.
the clothes are great, but you have to sell
Mm,
them. And then when you sell
yeah,
them, that money has to trickle through your business in a certain way. And I see brands fail because of that. Um,
yeah,
and
yeah.
it's huge.
It is. I think I think it is a huge. We sort of like kind of half prepared. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You go into it only knowing half, which is important. It's an important half to have the talent, to
Hmm.
have the creativity, to be able to design something that is desirable and
Yeah,
that
for
is
sure.
sellable. But then after you've made it, like literally, man, it is a business.
Hmm.
You are selling something, you know what I mean? Like music, you can have an artist and you
Yeah.
can have a great voice, you can be so
Hmm.
talented, but it
How
is
are
a
you going to
business.
sell it? Yeah, it is
How are
the
you going to
music
sell it?
business. It's the
Right? It's a
fashion business. Like, it's a thing.
business,
Hmm.
So for me, it is that I think for us, um, for me personally, it is an important aspect, even for what it is that I'm doing with this brand, that, okay, look, yeah, we'll create. And I think completely the brand is a creative, it's an avant-garde, we go for it,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. It gives
But
me that vibe. Just even on the social, it does. It's that, like you said, avant-garde, dark, moody feel.
yeah, yeah. And I, from some of the mentors that I've had, they've said to me that, look, the success of a brand or the success of a collection is when it is that it is being bought,
Hmm.
right? So yeah, you can create something and you can have a mood and a particular perspective, but if nobody's buying it, then like
That's it.
that's it. Nobody's
Yeah.
buying it. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
So
Something has to
pay
change.
attention. Yeah, something has to change.
Hmm.
The sales or the business aspect of a business also is important in determining the success of a business.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
Hmm.
I have the utmost respect, and I'm really just in awe of what Clive has created. I mean, he's literally survived and been able to sustain a business,
Hmm.
for 30, 40 years. And
That's a
to
long
me,
time.
that's a
Yeah.
long time,
Especially, it's
right?
like once you get into business, you realize it differently. Like, oh, I mean, it's you hear it like business has been around for 100 years, 50, but to
Right?
do it year
To
by
do it,
year is,
right?
because a year becomes a
It's
long time when it's your
yeah,
business. Like,
yeah,
it's
right?
like,
It's a long, long
hmm,
time. And
yeah,
especially if I look like from the 80s to how it is that the world has transformed to what it is today, I think like, yo, this business has existed and has survived through some really major
Changes in the world.
changes in the world,
Yeah.
right? And so for me, being able or given the responsibility to take it forward, I think like, yo, definitely going forward, certain things have to be priority, like the business side of things, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like speaking, like consistently speaking to a younger market. Because look, it is in the next 10 years, young people, the 20-year-olds of today are
That's
the
going to be the
30-year-old.
buyers.
Those exactly. They're the ones
Mm-hmm.
that are going to be more economically powerful and at a point where they can
Mm-hmm.
spend a little bit more than what they can spend now, right?
Yeah.
And so it is that thinking 10 years
Thinking
ahead,
ahead. You have to. Yeah.
right?
It's
Yeah.
like, well,
So
let me
not
bring
just
them
like,
in, get them familiar,
yeah,
cultivate them a little bit, build trust with them.
yeah,
So they might not spend with us now. These are the people who are going to buy from us tomorrow. But these will be the people that's going to
right,
buy from us in 10 years, who's going to continue to
right,
sustain us for that next
right,
10 years. Yeah.
right, right.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, that is a business eye,
Yeah.
right? That's looking at the brand from a business eye, like, okay, all right, this is what we're making now, but can we make this for 10 years down the line? You
Mm-hmm.
know, can we create? Can we create? Can we create for 10 years down the line? Let's not just
Yeah.
create for, like the hit song, if I was to make an
Exactly.
example,
Not for the hot
not just,
moment. This isn't a pop
nah,
up. This isn't a boutique. This is a brand.
nah. This
Yeah.
is a brand that,
Mm-hmm.
Jared, also, I come from a culture that is very much, um, has a lot of respect for the matriarchs, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, I think of how these women have been with this brand, you know, 20, 30 years,
Right.
and they have a particular skill and a knowledge and expertise, but also, going into the future, they've also got kids, they've got
Mm-hmm.
grandkids, right? And so they've given their lives to this brand.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, we are in a situation where, that doesn't necessarily just get passed on. So we
Yeah.
haven't we haven't gotten to a point where, you know, legacies can be passed on from one generation to the other.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, I'm really quite passionate about, and it's not really empowering, man. It's giving to these women what's due to them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
That's what's due to them. It's
Mm-hmm.
theirs. They've
You've
their
earned this.
expertise.
Yeah.
You've earned
You've
it.
you've earned this. Yeah.
You've earned this. So the public may not know of your names, but the brand recognizes
Mm-hmm.
that, yo, this is yours.
Yeah.
You've built this,
You've built
right?
this
And
just
so,
as much as the namesake that's on it. Like it took
right,
it
right,
takes multiple people.
right. And
Mm-hmm.
so, if in a financial, tangible way you can own it, then
Yeah.
let's do that. Because
Right.
then you have something to pass on to your kids.
Yeah.
They can come into the brand and
Mm-hmm.
have,
Something.
not just like, yeah, oh no, my grandmother used to work here, or
Yeah.
oh, my mother used to work here. No, it's like, yo, this is I own
Mm-hmm.
a piece of this,
And
you
then
know.
now
So,
it almost incentivizes too to keep it in the family. Like, hey, this is
right,
what we have done. Like, this is our
right,
history. Like my
right,
grandmother or my mother was an atelier at such and such, or they did so, and
right,
now they learn the skill and they know that, oh well, once I'm 18, I can easily work here
right.
because
And so, and
it comes from that.
Jared, it's quite interesting that I think as Africans, and specifically even in the fashion sense, we
Hmm.
have done that. So if you think of tailors, if you
Yeah.
think of dressmakers,
Hmm.
that's what they've done. They've created clothes for people. And so their kids, their sons, their daughters come in, they get trained, and then they are also tailors,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
But it's been up to, I think, and up to this point, it's been on a, you step into the tailor's shoes. You don't step
Hmm.
into the atelier shoes.
Yeah.
right? So it's been
Mm-hmm.
like, man, our parents and our grandparents have created ateliers in terms of skill and expertise, but
Mm-hmm.
not in terms of real financial or tangible, sort of in a tangible way, right?
Yeah, I know
So
what you
the
mean.
skill has been passed on from one generation to the other,
Mm-hmm.
but the
The
growth
finances
in
haven't
terms of
as well. The money hasn't.
right,
The money hasn't
right,
transitioned to compound like some of our
right,
counterparts. Like they
right,
have two
right,
hundred year old money. We have the knowledge. But sometimes, and
yeah,
sometimes I think something that I don't like to see a lot is I think we're at a point now where a lot of people are foregoing knowledge because
yeah,
it's so many options. So it's like, oh well, I don't have to be a tailor. I don't have to do what the or a barber even or whatever that my family did for 2 decades or 3 decades or 3 centuries
yeah,
and generations because
yeah,
I can go out and
yeah,
do some other frivolous thing. But I think it makes it way easier to leave something when money isn't involved. Because if you pass down money for 3 generations, you have to
mm,
maintain this money now. The responsibility is different.
mm,
So I think what
mm,
you said is very true. It's like we've
mm,
passed down the skill, the seamstress aspects of it, the tailoring
mm,
aspects of it,
mm,
but we haven't
mm.
passed down that tailoring business that has grown
Yeah,
and developed
yeah,
that does
yeah,
these 200-year-old
yeah,
styles.
yeah,
So people are
yeah,
much easier to walk away from it as you was getting it. I think, yeah, I agree
yeah.
100%.
So I look at, like, for an example, if you look at, like, in Italy, right?
Hmm.
Their
Oh yeah.
skills have been able to be passed down from one generation to the other, but
Hmm.
it's also the business has been passed
Yeah.
down from one generation to the other, right?
Yeah.
But we
Hmm.
haven't had that in Africa, where
Like
the
Prada.
skill is
Prada's the best
passed.
example. You're talking about
Yeah,
literally a family that from
right.
the grandfather to the dad to really now the women run Prada.
Yeah,
It's a
yeah.
woman-owned
You
business.
know,
It's in 3 generations. So
right?
yeah.
So,
Hmm.
so for us, for me, also, that's where my mindset is at as well. That, okay, pass down the skill, but also pass down the finance, the business around that skill,
Yeah.
right? So in a way, you really are, um, you really are passing down something that the next generation is going to go, all right, I can build on this.
Hmm.
I'm not just practicing a skill here, but actually I've got, not just the responsibility, but the ability to really build on for next generation. And I
Hmm.
think in doing that and being able to do that, uh, as African people, we'll be able to be taken seriously. Because now people won't
Yes.
just come through and steal or just take. It's going to
Hmm.
be, yo, listen, this is a
You have to
business
buy
now.
it, and you have to
You
buy
have
it
to
for
buy.
this price,
Exactly.
and
Yeah, exactly. It'll
this is
come
why it's
at
the
a
price.
cost.
Yes. a
Exactly.
hundred percent.
And so for me, that's where my mind is at. Like, okay, I'm looking at the brand, but I'm
Hmm.
also in a way just kind of thinking 10 years down the line, that's going to be next generation. What are they going to be doing?
Hmm.
Will they have a business? Will Lizzie have her daughter doing the patterns, doing the grading, doing the cutting as a
Right.
business? Not just her cutting in the business, but that's her business,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
Will Jamina or Matilda be doing the dyeing, the fabric sourcing as a business, not just as,
Hmm.
oh,
Right.
okay, my mother was dyeing and doing fabrication for this business, but actually
Yeah.
she had a skill that is a business, and so I can carry that forward and build on that, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
So I'm also using, I'm using the brand and the business to do that, to kind
Hmm.
of go, all right, in a real tangible way, realize what you have, the skill that you have, the expertise that you have, and the business that you have. And if you can
Hmm.
use Clive Rundel to leverage that, then
Do it.
then I think then I will have achieved, whether the brand is recognized or not. But for
Hmm.
me, I
It'll be
will have
recognized
achieved.
the way that you need to, because
Yeah, yeah,
you're talking about empowering people at this point. Like, no, I'm
yeah,
you helping you, your generations. Like, And because it's already, I mean, it's recognized in South Africa at this point. Like it's been
Mm,
around for years and years and years. Everything
mm,
now is who are the people that we're really empowering, and just expanding it to the next level. Because if you
yeah.
empower people, the expansion will come.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
It
For
has to,
me,
yeah.
it's a very, it's a passion of mine. It's something that does drive me, not just for myself, but to see other people literally that look like me, uh, really owning and making money from
Hmm.
what it is that they know and what it is that they can do, and
Yeah.
not just like, okay, um, I'm giving my service to somebody else and it's, for really little money, or it's for free, or that
Yeah.
people can just come through, steal codes, steal looks, steal ideas, make
Hmm.
money off of them, and then just kind of come through and go, oh, okay, we'll do a project with you, and then,
That's
you
it.
know, that's it.
Yeah.
I'd like us to, I'd like other Black people, Africans, to be able to, amongst each other first,
Hmm.
like, let's value each other. Let me
Right.
see you and kind of go, you've got a skill, you've
Yeah.
got value, you've
Hmm.
got something that is valuable that I'm willing to put money behind.
Yeah.
I think in that way, the international community can then go, okay, you know, there is something here. We need to
Hmm.
take these guys seriously because they're taking each other seriously,
Correct. Exactly. Yeah. I
right?
believe the
Yeah,
exact same thing. And I think the exact same way, just because I think you have to value, it's almost like you have to value yourself before anybody else can value you.
yeah,
And the community has to value the community before any other community
yeah,
cares.
right,
So it's like
right,
if I don't see you all doing business this way, why should I take you serious at first glance or
yeah,
whatever? Because
right,
you're not doing it like what we see from these other people. So I agree,
yeah,
and
yeah,
it's a passion of
yeah.
mine in the same way. Um,
Oh, okay,
everything you're
okay,
saying, yeah.
yeah. No, so yeah, it's, and that's why, when you ask me, like, for the future with the brand, I think, yeah, there's things that on the outside I'd like uh, to see happen: acknowledgement of the brand to do business,
Hmm.
for us to bring out good quality and beautiful, desirable product.
Hmm.
Those are important, but
Yes.
also just as important internally, whether inside the brand or even inside the community and the country. This is what I'd like the brand or the business to do as well, which is to create, businesses around skills, and to
Hmm.
be able to pass that on to the next generation of people, and to be able to then start networks of that skill being, sold and traded amongst each other, and for
Right.
us to take each other seriously as a pattern maker, as a
Hmm.
cutter, as a machinist, as a person who dyes fabrics, all those skills, for us to see them as businesses and to
Yeah.
start trading amongst each other. Like, okay, I want your skill as a pattern maker. I want your skill as a fabric dyeing person. I want your
Hmm.
skill as a cutter,
Hmm.
And when that starts to happen, I think then, what do they say? They say, high tide raises all the ships, right?
Yeah. Hmm.
So it's not just one person, kind of shining, but
Yeah.
actually, if you
Everybody's
raise the
elevating.
tide, yeah, everybody's elevating. So
Hmm.
yeah, for me, it's an internal objective. It's an internal purpose that, the business has for me, and that's what I'd like the business to do.
Yeah, that's huge. That's huge. That's huge. I mean, I think the conversation that we have had has been very enlightening for me, for sure. And I'm so glad
Great.
we connected just because you touched on so many points and key points that I'm seeing somebody on
Mm,
across the pond in the southern part of Africa resonating with me on in
sure.
America at the top of America. And it's just crazy that
Right.
they are just so, so, so similar. and somebody else who
Yeah.
looks like me and who's in the fashion industry, who's really going along the same mission and initiatives, just in kind of, a different format and vessel.
Mm,
But
mm,
no, I think the
mm.
conversation was amazing. What
Yeah.
you are doing and looking to do, I think, is right on time. I think it's very much needed, and I hope that this message can be something that spreads to many, many other people who are immediately in fashion as professionals, but also, of course, aspiring
Mm,
fashion professionals, that they are
yeah.
being inspired and motivated and understanding um, really one, how you have to look at business, but also one, how you have to look at people. Really taking
Yeah.
value in the people who are
Yeah.
working with you, because no single person has ever built a great brand.
Yeah.
It takes people,
Yeah.
and
It
it
does.
does. So, and the more people you have who are truly invested in the vision, the bigger the brand can be. Um,
Yeah.
so I think
Yeah.
everything you
Yeah.
said is huge, and it's amazing how we started from South Africa Fashion Week and got to the future of the industry. But I do think though the opportunity is growing, the opportunity is budding, especially for Africa and the major markets. And I
Mm,
hope that the conversation builds. And I want to be one of the facilitators to help the conversation build,
yeah.
because I want Africa to understand the position that they're about to be in. And I really want them to create
Sure.
something almost like China is doing with how they're taking over fashion right now, because we
Mm,
see
mm.
major luxury players are putting their headquarters in these countries.
In these
And
countries.
yes, that's not a, it's
Yeah.
like, I mean, they're literally moving like, oh, well, let's
Wow.
go over here.
Wow.
Like,
You're
if we
so
see
right,
what
huh?
they've done in really just 20 years, if we think about it, because what, back in, I mean, the 90s, there weren't a lot of American fashion. I mean, Paris
Mm,
was really Paris was the place in the 80s.
mm,
90s was
mm,
really
mm,
huge as far as American fashion. Nobody was
mm.
touching American fashion in the 90s. But you look at what China has done as far as how they're coming and how
So
they've placed
true.
themselves in every major fashion week. Like, you will see Asian
Wow.
designers in Paris. I see a ton of Asian designers in New York Fashion Week.
Yeah,
You'll
yeah, 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 yeah.
like I've like shit, I didn't even know it was still American Fashion Week
Yeah.
anymore, how much it is. But it's like, as well as
Wow.
London specific, like those are what I would say are probably the three biggest. I don't see it as much in Milan, but Paris, London, and New York, the
Yeah.
influx is huge. And so much of it is
Hmm.
what I found in covering them and talking to them and like even shooting behind the scenes, is they're getting real support from their governments or their countries to invest in
Oh,
them, to come over here to present and really make this money. And then, because they always fly back to the country,
yeah.
the models
Yeah.
and the designers, they come over here to do
Yeah.
whatever they need to, but they don't live
Yeah.
here, they go home. And that's where they're
Yeah.
taking that money, and that money is being recycled in that community in the
Wow.
format of group
Wow.
economics. So
Wow.
I think if Africa understands that, because we can see it in our lifetime. I mean, I'm
Mm,
just 29, so I'm not. I'll be 30 at the end of the
mm,
year. So literally in a
mm.
young generation, we can see such an impactful thing.
See.
And I see
Wow.
that same thing coming for Africa right now, because people are really starting to look, and the designers are really starting to feel that the world is smaller because of social. So my whole
Yeah.
thing is
Yeah.
take advantage, but take advantage in a business format. The
Mm.
acknowledgement doesn't matter. If you have the finances and the business, you can pay for the advertising. Like, you can buy the attention. I'm like, get the money first. That's how I
That is
look at
so
it.
true.
So yeah, so it's a huge, huge
Yeah,
thing.
sure.
And I hope to see it within the next 10 to 15 years for sure.
Yeah, yeah, for sure, brother.
Yeah, but we will definitely be in contact. Feel free to reach out anytime.
Yeah,
I'll
yeah.
definitely be following up and staying in touch. And then once we publish the article, I'll definitely send you a link to it, and
Sure.
everything that we have going on
Okay.
over here as well.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. All right, my man. I will let you
All
get
right,
on with the rest of your night, because I know it's late
man.
on your side. But I appreciate
Yeah.
you making the time. And like I said, feel free to get in touch anytime.
All right, cool. Thank you so much, man.
All right, man. Talk to you
All
later.
right. All
Bye.
right. Thank you.